All right, guys. First and foremost, I just want to thank you for being a part of this Elite Test Prep course. This is a training that is only for members in the course. I realize that I do the YouTube videos, I have the course all set up, we do the coaching sessions, we do a lot of different things to get you to the place where you're going to be able to pass this exam. So, if many of you met me for the one on one strategy sessions, you know I tell you let's focus on the content and we'll get to the strategy and then we get that mind right. Those are my three things. I want you to be able to have the content, that means the knowledge, the information that you need, then being able to have a strategy so you can apply it to the actual exam when it comes to questions. And then, of course, we get your mindset going all throughout, because if you don't have all three, it's almost impossible to pass the exam. So today I'm going to be talking to you about application questions. Yes, the exam is made of a lot of different types of questions: application, recall, so forth. However, this specific training is on application because it's applicable, you like that, to LCSW and LMSW exam test takers. So I'm going to break it down. We're going to do some questions together. Pause the video before I show the answer so that way you can make sure that you have an understanding and you would have picked that option. And if you didn't pick the option, it's okay as well, because I am going to give you the rationale and why one answer was that versus the other. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. And in the process of me sharing my screen, you'll be able to see exactly what it is that I'm looking at, go over these questions in detail with me, and that way you'll be good to go when it comes to test day. All right. So first, as I shared, we're going to be talking about how to tackle application questions. First, you must understand the question stem clearly. So maybe at this point, you're not familiar with the stem. You're like, what the heck are you talking about? So listen, when it comes to identifying the stem, you must identify who the client is. Is the client an individual? It is a family? Is it a group? Is it a community? Is it a couple? You get the gist. Identify who your client is. And then you want to notate any keywords like, what do you do first? What do you do next? What is the best option? What is most likely? These are the key words that you must look for and identify when you're answering a question. This will help guide you to how you prioritize and how you answer the questions. If it says, what do you do first? Then you know that this is the thing that you do before you do anything else. If it says, what do you do next? It means that something else was done, but now it's the next thing that you must do. If it said, what is the best course of action? Obviously, there's some other actions that are good and maybe even okay, but they want you to pick the best option. And then when it says most likely, meaning it could be something else, but it is more than or most likely this answer. That is how you have to be able to identify the keywords. A lot of times when you're taking the test, you see that, but you're focused so quickly on answering the question and feel like you know it that you're not focusing on that keyword. So please make sure you do that. And then you must recognize if the scenario is a clinical one, an ethical one, or community-based one. And if you're taking the LMSW exam, you know it's probably going to be more of an ethical or community-based one. Yes, you can have some clinical questions in there, but that is more for the LCSW exam takers. All right, so then it says use the KSA or the CASA. Any people have all types of names and things that they use for it. But basically, when it comes to the CASA, that is how much knowledge, how much skills and ability you have when it comes to the information. The knowledge is what theoretical frameworks or interventions apply to this situation. And then the skills are going to be your intervention, your techniques, things of that nature that are going to be most effective. And then ability is what you should do given these situations and circumstances. That is the abilities. Now, many of you have maybe heard of the KSA approach, because in order to take the exam, whether it's the LMSW or the LCSW, there is a list of KSAs that they would like everybody who was taking the exam to know. So when I built my course, I was able to review what the ASWB board has said are the KSAs that must be known and must be understood when taking this examination. So you can find it online easily. However, it is something I can easily drop in the community so you can review it and make sure you have an understanding of it. And you can kind of use it as a checklist. Even though you're taking the course and you're moving through everything, you can use that as a checklist for the areas that you need more support with or areas that you might not be as concerned with. So that is something that the board actually gives for free. And a lot of people don't know that, but that is a hidden gem. You want to be able to use that. So please, if you have not seen it dropped in the community, make sure after you watch this training, you say where the case is at. Or is it the CASA's at? I don't know. It's the KSA. You got it. All right. Now let's move on to the third one. Follow the first, next, best, or most strategy. You hear that? Many of you have been like, look, I've taken this test a few times. I don't know what it is. It might be that you have the knowledge, but you might not have the strategy. So that is where this training comes in at. So first, when it's first, you focus on immediate actions. You assess, you engage, you gather. This is what you're doing first and foremost. When it says what's next, meaning you probably have already engaged with the client, gathered information, probably have already assessed. Remember, as I said before, you've already done something. Now it's asking, what do you do next? So you would think logically, after you do this, then it's this. That is the best way. So you would either intervene, refer the client out, so forth. You get the gist. And then the third thing is best. What is the most effective intervention for this situation? Remember, there are other things that might be good, they might be okay, but here they want the best. They want the most effective. So you would ask yourself these questions and prioritize which one you feel based on your knowledge, your skills, and the abilities that you have as a social worker would be the best course of action. All right, most. What is the most ethical or legally sound decision? Most. So as you can see the key there, when you see most, you're likely dealing with something that is going to probably deal with ethical or legality. That is a good way to look at it. Number 4, let's use the process of elimination. I hear many people who are taking other test prep courses and are just passing a test and exam. They say, I use the process of elimination. And I'm like, that is awesome. That is 101. You learn that in school. When you're taking the test, the teacher says use process of elimination. If you don't know the answer, that is something that you need to do, or you're not sure, you start an elimination process. So let's break it down. Eliminate answers that are out of scope or not relevant to your social work role. That is the key here. Remember, you are taking the social work exam. So in the process of taking the social work exam, you have to be able to focus on what is in your scope of practice and what is most relevant as a social worker. That is your role. And then you also want to remove the extreme or the unethical responses. So if it's something that's telling you, the example here is like breach confidentiality, or you do something and you don't observe or monitor or look for safety issues, or maybe the person has a drug issue and you decide you're going to continue to work with them and you're not a substance abuse counselor. Like, there's things that you would know that is unethical in how you're answering it, or it's something extreme. And that is pretty much what you would do, or how you would utilize the process of elimination. Another one is that you want to avoid answers that skip the assessment process unless, remember, if it's asking what do you do next, meaning you probably have already did the assessment process, then you would do what logically follows. However, you don't want to just skip over the assessment process. That is something that you definitely want to consider and look into, or make sure that you're doing when you're questioning or taking the exam. All right, I hope you're finding this helpful, and I hope you're able to move along with me, because as you know, we're getting ready to jump into the questions, because I want you to be able to apply the information and the techniques that I'm providing here. So let's do a crisis intervention scenario. And again, this training is for LMSWs and LCSWs alike. Remember, how you apply and how you answer the questions when you're dealing with an application situation is the same. Yes, the question is going to ask you a little bit more information, or ask for a little bit more clinical knowledge or more content-based questions. It depends on what test you're taking. But this technique can be utilized regardless of what test you're taking. So keep that in mind. And these questions are geared and focus more on someone taking the LMSW exam. But if you're taking that LCSW exam, you should be able to breeze right through them. We'll see. All right, here goes a question. A social worker at a hospital is called to see a 30-year-old client who has just experienced a traumatic car accident. The client appears distressed, is unable to sleep, and is having flashbacks about the accident. What should the social worker do first? Here we go, guys. I'm going to break it down and show you the rationale, but I want you to think about it before I switch and move to the next screen. In this case, your role as a social worker, who is the client? We're identifying them. It's the 30-year-old person. We don't know if it's a male or female, but it's a 30-year-old, and that is the identified client. What's happened here? They have experienced a traumatic car accident, and they're distressed, unable to sleep, and they're having flashbacks as a result of this. What should the social worker do first? Remember, it's not a first, it's asking first, not what do you do next, what do you do most, what is the best. It's saying, what do you do first? So A, do you refer the client for a psychiatric evaluation? B, do you conduct a thorough biopsychosocial assessment? C, do you provide psychoeducation on trauma reactions? D, do you encourage the client to talk about their experiences in detail? What do you think? Pause the video and answer the question, because I'm going to continue to move on. All right. So the correct answer in this case, in this scenario, is B. You would conduct a thorough biopsychosocial assessment. And I'm sure you guys got that right, because when we were talking about it earlier in the training, remember we said, what do you do first? So if you're doing something first, you want to see and assess if the assessment has been completed. It didn't say next, it said first. So you know you would have to start with the bare bone basics, and that is doing a biopsychosocial assessment. Now, it says here, the first step is always to assess the situation before you jump in and you start intervening. So providing psychoeducation is an intervention, correct? Encouraging the client to talk about their experiences is an intervention. You're like providing therapy in that moment. Referring the client to a psychiatric evaluation, you're just jumping to referring them out before you have actually tried to start with the assessment process. You don't know what's going on. You don't have enough data. You're just like, look, you need to go get some medication management. That wouldn't make sense. All right. So A, the psychiatric evaluation, it might be necessary later, but right now, unless there's an immediate mental health crisis, that is not the first thing you do. The psychoeducation, we talked about that. You have to understand, and it's a good tool, but it is an intervention. And then talking in detail, that could definitely re-traumatize a client. And that's why I said that's more of a therapy session. All right, let's move on to ethical dilemma question. Yeah. Ooh, hopefully you guys didn't see the answer. But if you did, it's fine. It's just all about learning here. So ethical dilemma. A social worker in a community agency. What are you? Yep, a social worker in a community agency. Yep, you got your role, your title. What are you doing? What role are you in as a social worker? Now, you receive a request from a client's spouse asking for information about the partner's treatment progress. So you're the social worker, community agency, ding, ding, ding. It's the client's wife or a husband calling to say, hey, I want some information on my partner's treatment progress. The spouse states that they're worried about their partner's well-being and just want to make sure they're okay. What should the social worker do first? A, provide general information without specifics to protect confidentiality. B, check the client's file to see if there's a signed release of information. C, inform the spouse that they're not allowed to discuss anything. And D, speak with the client in the next session to encourage open communication. Now, this question says it's an ethical dilemma. So before I get to the answers and go through the rationale, tell me, what do you think you do first? Pause it. You write out what you think the answer is and why you think it is. And then your girl going to go ahead and break it down. All righty. So in this question right here, you have an individual you have a social worker that works in a community agency. Now, many of you might be thinking, well, it's a spouse. You should be able to share information with your spouse. Not if there's not a release. You're providing a confidential service. And maybe the spouse doesn't even know the person's seeking service. Maybe they're just calling to try to figure out and saw the number and was like, let me call and see that my spouse going here. It could be a lot of different things that come from this. So obviously you want to check the file first to see if there's a signed release, because it says, what do you do first? And then if the release is signed, then you might be able to provide some specific information, depending on what the release is saying you can provide. And then you also want to probably talk to the spouse in the session and say, hey, your wife called and blah, 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 blah. Your husband called, blah, blah, blah. These are things that you would do. But remember, the key here is it says, what does the social worker do first? That is the huge thing that you need to be looking at. All right, so confidentiality is the key. The social worker must first determine if there is a signed release before sharing the information. Providing general information could violate confidentiality because maybe the spouse didn't even know for real that the person was there, and you'll be violating their trust by sharing even limited information. C, saying they can't discuss anything, technically that's correct, but is not the best practice approach. And even though I didn't go into detail here, it's not the best practice approach because if you say, hey, I can't say anything, you're still kind of leading on that the client spouse is receiving services with you. So you don't even want to give that much information. Normally, the statement is, if there's no release on file, you would say, I cannot confirm or deny whether that person is seeking services here. If you believe there are, please have them reach out to us and file a release or something along those lines. All right, that was just a little extra, a little extra. I could be extra, guys, but it's helping you in the long haul. All right, let's move on to the third question, client resistance. A social worker is working with a client who has been court ordered to attend therapy for anger management. The client is hostile. They refuse to engage, and they state, I don't need to be here. This is a waste of my time. What is the social worker's best response? Let you see it a little bit before I'll give you the answer. All right, there we go. So A, confront the client about their resistance and refuse to engage. B, explain the importance of therapy and the benefits of participation. C, acknowledge the client's feelings and explore their perspective. D, warn the client that failure to participate could have legal consequences. Go ahead and pause and tell me what you think and the answer is, and then we will go back. All right, so now that you guys have had an opportunity to probably answer that question, we're going to stroll down and I am going to see if you got the right answer. All right, so let's see. The correct answer is C. Yes, let's see the answer C. You would acknowledge the client's feelings and explore their perspective. Building rapport is crucial when you're dealing with client resistance. And if you did A, you'll be confronting that resistance, which may make the client a little hostile. It might make them a little upset. And B, if you explain the benefits, people, if they really don't want to do something, you just going through with all the benefits, it might be useful, but without validating how that client feels, it's not going to be effective. Because think about it. When you're working with someone and they really don't want to hear it and you're like, oh, it's going to be really beneficial. I'm going to be able to help you and you're going to get so much from it. And like, I want to hear that. And especially with the client that's resistant. So that's not going to go. And indeed, warning about the consequences could backfire because you're making them more resistant. Like, oh, you're going to tell me why I'm going to get in trouble and all the consequences. I don't have time for this. That's why I don't want to do it. It could just cause a whole lot of stuff. So obviously, whenever you're working with clients, our goal is always to build rapport and to help that client and engage them. I'm sorry, I'm scrolling down like it's something else there. But yes, you want to engage them. So those are the best things. I hope this was helpful for you. I hope you were able to get some insight on how you can be a better test taker by learning how to do application questions, because application questions obviously are going to be on the exam. They're going to be there and you're going to have to know how to answer them, and you're going to have to just utilize them in a way that maybe you didn't even know how to or why to and all that good stuff. So some final tips. Always remember, think like a social worker. You always want to assess first before you intervene. That's one tip. Number two, you want to follow ethical guidelines. Confidentiality, autonomy, and a client's well-being always comes first. You also want to prioritize the client's immediate needs. Don't jump to interventions without understanding the situation fully. Don't go in there being super save a social worker. I thought I was going to say something else. But yes, you want to be mindful. You want to prioritize the client's immediate needs without jumping in and feeling like you got all the answers. And this is my favorite. It's just for you guys. Practice mock exams. This will help you get comfortable applying these strategies, and it will really help you understand and hone in on this information. If you've completed this mini training on the application questions, I need you to go in the community, send me a chat message, or either make a comment or a post saying, I love the application questions. I understood the application questions, or the application questions. I'm going to rock them, whatever it is. I just need you to make a post about the application questions. And then I'm going to send you a special quiz on just application questions and see how you're able to knock it out. Whether you're LMSW or LCSW test taker, I'm going to help you get to the next level. Remember, this training is only for those in the community that have purchased the course and that are ready to take it to the next level. So you won't find this on YouTube, so you don't see all the little edits and stuff going around. It's just me and you talking, because you deserve the absolute best, because you've decided to make that investment into yourself. So make sure you go in the community and put application questions, or if you don't like all of that and you're not really comfortable with doing the whole community stuff, you can just send me a nice little chat and say, can you send me the application questions, please? I might give you a hard way to go, but you know I'm going to send them. Talk to you soon.